Right. Thank you for joining us this morning for K Talks. This program is being aired in Duxbury, Kingston, Plymouth, and Pembroke. This show is geared to help people feel connected, stay healthy, and reduce stress during these challenging times. We're so thrilled to have Kay Cooney, advanced practice geriatric nurse and wellness coach, and a volunteer at the Senior Center with us today. She has been kind enough to lead so many educational programs for us and share really important information with us every week. This week we have a great topic, and it's timely and it's important, and we're going to talk about neuroplasticity. I hope I'm saying that right.
Pretty close.
Yep, and the goal is teaching old dogs some new tricks, and she's going to share some tricks with us today. So, Kay, take it away.
Good morning, my friend. So good to see you. Welcome. Hi, everybody. This is going to be such a great topic. If you are somebody who is caring for a loved one with dementia, a family or a loved one with stroke, someone with chronic pain, struggling with depression, those are some of the things we're going to address this pretty novel approach of managing them. So get your pen and paper out while we learn. This is one of my most favorite, fascinating topics. So if you give me just 1 second, I'm going to share my screen. And as always, please, please, please email in your questions. We love it when you talk to us. Share screen.
I think if you hit Alt-S, you should be able to share your screen. Maybe?
Did that do it?
Nope.
What? Yeah, right there.
All righty, you did it, Kay.
I made it harder than it needed to be. Okay. Voila. Okay, neuroplasticity. Yes, you can teach an old brain new tricks. And neuroplasticity, so let's talk about what that really is, other than a really big word. If I could give you a visual, picture a gigantic cornfield, okay, with it's never been walked in, nothing but corn, no paths, nothing but corn straight ahead of you. That's your brain, okay, when the day you're born. It's got no neural pathways. You decide that right in the middle of the cornfield in the center, there's a bowl of your favorite dessert, your favorite ice cream. And every day you walk that path, okay? The first time you walk that path, you're going to have to do a little bit of work. It's going to be a little bit awkward. It's not going to be a very defined path. You get your ice cream, you come back. The second day you walk that path, it starts to get a little bit more defined because you're breaking down the corn as you're getting there. 2 weeks of that path, it's a pretty well padded down pathway, right? So you can see the neural pathway, if you will, from where you went to get ice cream. And that's neuroplasticity. That is doing things in such a way that a pathway develops. So the brain's ability to adapt to all circumstances is unbelievable. It can reorganize by forming new neural connections. So let's say, for example, let's go back to the cornfield. One day you're walking out there to get your ice cream and you see a big, gigantic spider, right? I hate spiders. So I no longer want to walk that way to get my ice cream because I'm afraid of the spider. So I realize if I start 5 steps to the right and I swing in like an arc, I can still get to the ice cream without seeing the spider. That's neuroplasticity, finding a new pathway to get to the same outcome. It's critical as we're aging to come up with these alternative pathways. When we're a kid, it happens, we are building neural pathways by the minute, right? You can't hold a kid back. Picture the 3, 4, 5-year-old that needs to get over the wall or needs to reach a toy. They're going to find a way. As we get older, we limit ourselves from doing these things, okay? So neuroplasticity allows the nerves, the nerve cells, the neurons in your brain to compensate for injury, disease, and adjust all sorts of activities, okay? It's the change in the pathways in your brain that occurs based on our behavior, on our thinking processes, brain engagement, all that good stuff. So it really is talking about, it's very different than neurogenesis, which we'll address what that is. But neuroplasticity is your brain's ability, unlimited ability to keep learning, to keep growing, and to keep finding new pathways. It refers to the brain's ability to restructure itself. So, for example, if you had a stroke on one side, your brain will eventually compensate and go around it. So, you may have damage to your left hemisphere, and lo and behold, the right hemisphere starts picking up some of your language abilities. How long does it take for neuroplasticity to start occurring so that you could see it and measure it? And this is what's amazing. Somewhere between 5 to 10 days of repeating a behavior, you can start to see evidence of neuroplasticity, right? When you think about that, that's crazy, right? 5 to 10 days to make a change. And the key to all of this is repetition. So let's go back to the cornfield. The first time you walk out there doesn't leave a particularly easy to find path. But by day 5 and then by day 10, you have a clear path out there, right? So repetition is very, very important. Neurogenesis is a different concept. Neurogenesis is your brain's ability to keep building new neurons. And we used to think that this only happened in kids, but you develop new neurons in your brain through your entire duration of your life. Okay, here's one of the greater examples. So Jill Taylor is a trained neuroscientist from Harvard, and she had a fairly massive stroke. And what's amazing is we used to think that only children and adolescents' brains have this capacity to recover, but 8 years post-stroke, she actually wrote a New York Times bestseller, My Stroke of Insight. Great book to read if you have somebody in your life or you yourself have undergone a stroke. But it took a significant amount of time and repetition. And what often happens is, so we all know that person who went through a stroke. I have a son's, one of my girlfriend's brothers was in a car accident and severed his spine. People thought he was crazy because of the amount of work he was doing to rehab and get his walking back. And he stayed at it for years. And I think he was probably somewhere along the line of like year 9 or 10, and when he achieved an ability to walk again.
Wow.
So what they're saying with neurogenesis is we often give up. Our rehab is dictated often by insurance reimbursement. And what neuroplasticity and neurogenesis tells us is stay at it. Stay at it. Accept no limitation to your function. Keep pushing, pushing, pushing. Okay?
Okay, quick question.
Yes.
Are there certain things we should do to help our brain make new pathways every day? Is it reading? Is it exercise? And maybe that's your next slide.
So I listed a ton of them because I think it's critical. So one of the things that I was noticing when I put this together, and we talked a little bit about this last week, was everything, all these topics that we've talked about up to this point build off of one another. And placing that together so that you are making a life that is rich and engaging is everything. So I will answer your question. But first, these are the areas that we want to pay attention to. Post-stroke, right? So getting new neural pathways to take care of the stroke injury, brain injury. If one hemisphere of the brain has been infarcted, is no longer working, how do we get the others to start picking up the slack? Dementia. This is critical, and I will give you a scenario in which this was used for dementia very successfully. Pain, retraining the neural pathways around chronic pain using neuroplastic techniques, stress reduction, and intermittent fasting, all ties in, and depression. Now, I want to be clear on depression because there's many aspects to it. There's a lack of, there are definitely some genetic factors. There is definitely some lack of dopamine or sertraline for some, serotonin for some people. But there is also, we have been trained often by our family and our social norms to behave in certain ways to certain situations as opposed to looking at things optimistically. So that's where neuroplasticity can come into play. Learning and neuroplasticity. So when we learn something new, we create a new pathway to the brain. Okay, so let's go back to our cornfield and the spider. That spider was there. A 5-year-old wouldn't have given it 5 minutes of thought before they found a new way to get to that bowl of ice cream, right? As adults, would have stood there in the pathway and worried about the spider, right? We would not, we'd have thought of how are we going to kill the spider? How are we going to avoid the spider? Can we outrun the spider? We would do anything but make a new neural pathway. Kids wouldn't give that a second thought. They'd have 10 new pathways to the ice cream, right? And then have a box that captured the spider. So it's learning new things and looking at things critically. Not all learning is equal. So this isn't a situation where I want everybody to do Sesame Street, Dora the Explorer, and start learning how to count from 1 to 10 in Spanish, right? That's memorization. Memorization is very, very different, and it's so ingrained in us because of the way that we were taught in our school systems. It is about doing things that we're critically thinking about, that require us to think, that require us to feel vulnerable, that require us to get frustrated, right? We're smart as adults. When we get older, we stay away from that stuff, right? I would, how many have picked up a Rubik's Cube just for fun in the last 20 years? Not this girl, right?
Yeah.
So if you can't do it and it frustrates you, what do? You avoid it. The whole premise behind this is if it frustrates you, keep going. Keep doing it. Okay. Repetition is critical, right? So every day you walk that path out to the ice cream, you are pushing down more corn stalks. You are reinforcing that pathway. It becomes clearer and clearer and easier. Think about how you learned to play tennis or baseball. It was over and over and over of swinging the racket or swinging the bat, right? Which is what made us proficient. How do we encourage it? Okay, so this is the secret to how do we do this. 1, sleep. When you go to bed at night and you sleep, it is the same as the night shift of workers coming into the factory. The night workers come in and they start doing all the repair from all the built up stressors, toxins that we accumulate during the day. It allows your body to rest and it supports your organs, including your brain. So if you're not getting a good night's sleep, and that's going to be one of our topics up and coming, we should never accept a lousy night's sleep. And many, I would say more than 50% of the aging population lists sleep as a problem, and they accept it as a normal part of aging. It is not a normal part of aging. So we need sleep to have good brains. We need good gut health, right? Ding, ding, ding. Does it sound like we're repeating ourselves around here, right? So what you eat matters. Hydration, healthy diet, intermittent fasting, all of these can promote neuroplasticity in the brain. Reading fiction.
Why fiction?
So it's about taking your brain again to new places, to critical places challenging you to think, explore. Physical exercise of any kind. So when you are exercising, you are pumping blood, and that blood is going to the neurons in the brain, and it's regenerating them. So it's kind of like when you're exercising, it's not unlike watering your lawn, right? Without getting the blood pumping to all the different parts of your body, tissue dies off, right? Things don't get oxygenated. When you're watering plants, you're getting water right on that grass. If you don't water that grass, your lawn looks like a mess. Same thing.
How long does a person need to exercise every day?
So that I defer back to the doctor, because there's a lot of variables to that. Do they have cardiac limitations? Where are they at in terms of joint health and things like that? Okay. But my goodness, any of us can do even slow walking 10 minutes, right? Minimum 10 minutes.
Okay.
Get something pumping, do something.
But
Okay.
definitely check with your doctor before you start any exercise program, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yep. I have to pre-curse that one. Okay. We talked about sleep. Travel. Here's a funny phenomenon. So back when I first started nursing, I was covering Hope Valley in Rhode Island. We didn't have GPS. We only had maps. Hope Valley, most of it was not on the map. I would drive around for hours on end at 2 in the morning as a hospice nurse looking for street names and otherwise. And I hate to think that that was my sharpest point in my life, but it probably was. With GPS, we're not even paying attention. We have somebody telling us where to go. So when it says travel, there is something about the experience of being in a new area. You pay attention very differently. If you're from Plymouth and you drive through downtown Plymouth, there are probably a million things you no longer notice. You go and drive through Duxbury, you may notice different things, right? So changing your environment so that your filter increases. I can remember I was going to a conference down at Yale, and it was how I realized I needed a new prescription glasses. I couldn't read any of the signs. And what had happened was from when I was driving around in my own environment, I knew the street names. So I could fill in. If I couldn't see the letters, my brain filled it in. My brain knew that was Main Street. So it could detect an M. Now here I am in an area where I don't know the names of the streets. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's time for a new prescription, right? So it's a good thing to do. Travel. You don't have to necessarily get in a plane. Just go someplace new.
So, Kay, also, I've heard that if you go to work every day or go to the grocery store, every time you go, you should go a different direction. So that's a way of expanding your neuroplasticity.
Absolutely, it forces you to pay attention to new things.
So, really, paying attention is so important in our everyday life and not being on autopilot.
Absolutely, autopilot is the exact opposite of neuroplasticity.
Okay.
When you get in your car and it's listening to the GPS to get you to the same location you went yesterday, no neuroplasticity is going on at all.
Okay. So maybe the first time use the GPS, the second time take a risk, and if you go down the wrong street, just go with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Manage it. And think about that, right? So for a lot of people right now, that scenario just caused anxiety in a lot of people, right? That anxiety is neuroplasticity. That's good. You're going into a zone that of unknown, and your body is going to learn, adapt, and adjust for that. And that's a great thing.
So, question for you. A lot of people aren't leaving the house right now because of coronavirus. There's
Yes.
a ton of travel shows that you can travel the world at home. How would that do for expanding your brain by sitting and watching an educational program on a trip to Italy?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a good.
You can do it on the TV. If you have a computer, you can do it on YouTube. So I'm going to admit this. I don't know why. So I can sit on YouTube for hours. My latest thing has been watching the removal of tonsil stones from people. I will watch surgeries. I will watch travel videos. I will watch learning a foreign language. There is anything you can think of to search, you can find on TV or YouTube right now.
Okay.
I've never been less bored in all my life than I have during this pandemic.
Well, and that's where technology really has been a gift because there is so much out there.
Yes. Yes. And using it strategically so you don't go down a rabbit hole, right? So Facebook and sitting and watching what everybody else is doing is not neuroplasticity, right? That's not learning anything at all. Searching and using the web functions and almost like treating the computer like it's your Encyclopedia Britannica, only better because you can go anywhere. You can learn anything online right now.
So it's all about learning.
Absolutely, positively. And creating a little friction for yourself, right? Using your non-dominant hand. We talked a little bit about this last week. So if you brush your teeth with your right hand, brush your teeth with your left hand intentionally. If you comb your hair with your right hand, use your left hand to comb. If you normally stir your pot with the right hand, stir it with the left and go counterclockwise instead of clockwise, right? These are little things you can do in your home without ever leaving your home that are helping change your brain. And pay attention to what your brain's doing, right? So let's use spaghetti sauce. You're standing in the kitchen right now and you're going to make a sauce and you decide you're going to stir it only with your left hand counterclockwise. Okay. Watch and see what your brain starts doing, right? The first couple of stirs, you're going to realize this is awkward. And your brain is screaming at you, no, no, you're going the wrong direction. You're using the wrong hand. And that's a case of your brain wants to stay. Your brain's job is to protect you. It wants to stay in the status quo. And you have to tell it, no, no, I'm going counterclockwise and I mean to do this. And that will take that anxiety down. So think about where you can use your non-dominant hand.
Okay.
Now, this is the fun part to me. So macrame has been my thing. I want to learn macrame. Knitting, I don't get the same thing out of knitting and crochet. I like the idea of wall hangings, macrame as an art, and tying knots. So that's what right now I'm researching how to start macrame. Any of you can find that online. There are so many resources. Same with knitting, crochet, painting, sculpting, scrapbooking. There are so many different things out there that you can be self-teaching or joining a group that can reinforce all of this. Mm-hmm. You can learn to dance the tango online. You can learn to dance a million different country line dances online, right? You and your friend, your daughter, whoever you're living with, your spouse, can take up Friday night dancing in your own living room. Yoga. Doesn't the I believe you guys are doing a virtual yoga class.
We have a Facebook Live yoga class, and actually PACTV is going to be putting up some yoga classes that will be available to all 4 towns. So, yep, there's a lot of exercise at each of the local senior centers, but if you check our newsletter, it will list the exercise classes. We just started a new 45-minute Pilates class on Monday morning at 9. It's led by a physical therapist. She works you through the paces and you're done in 45 minutes.
Love it.
Yeah. And it's
right.
It's free.
And so the beauty of yoga or Pilates is there's something magical about crossing the midline for your brain. So because right side takes care of left side. So when we talk about use of non-dominant hand, it's because one side of your body frequently doesn't cross the midline, right? I'm right-handed. So my hand's doing this all day, right? I don't use my left hand to swat a fly, a bug, a stir, or do any of that stuff. When you cross the midline, you are increasing your balance, reducing your fall risk, and yoga and Pilates integrates stretching, pain reduction, crossing the midline, neuroplasticity, relaxation. It hits so many of the wellness points
and
that we talk about.
Strength too,
Right? Phenomenal. Yeah. Phenomenal. One of these that kept coming up was learning to juggle, which it came up in every article and every reference. If any of you can juggle, I will invite you to be on the show to show everyone you're juggling. I'm not a juggler. I'm just a clown. Okay. So there's a challenge out there. Be on the show, be a juggler. Real puzzles, Sudoku, challenging puzzles, the New York Times crossword, challenging your friends, even doing large puzzle, 1,000-piece puzzles that are geometric designs, all great things for you. And then the listening to music and always having music on whenever possible. So upon autopsy, the brains of musicians that somebody was studying are completely different looking than the rest of the population. They have lobes that are overdeveloped and other areas that are underdeveloped. They hear and they think differently. So we know that there is something beyond the relaxation, the joy, all of the things that music brings to us, and how it stimulates the brain. And I will tell you, with my elderly dementia patients, there are patients who are completely non-responsive in the long-term care facility, and we would put music on and the toe would start tapping or the hand would start tapping. Music reaches people on a very, very deep level.
Hey, can I ask you two questions? You talked about puzzle. What about games like Scrabble, Yahtzee, card games, things like that?
Critical thinking things, right? So Scrabble is a great one, right? So let's talk about Scrabble versus like something like the game Trouble, where you're just moving a piece around the board,
Mhm.
right? Scrabble requires that you're going into many lobes of your brain in terms of small motor, picking up the pieces, as well as coming up with words, as well as working the word off or some other word. There's so many different aspects to Scrabble. Scrabble's a brilliant game for people.
Okay. How about you said music? Does it matter what kind of music? Any kind of music.
No, any kind of music.
Okay.
Sort
So
of the
turn it
putting
on,
together.
have it in the background, sing along in the car. Even if you're not a good singer, sing away.
Girl, if anybody could ever film me in my car when a good song comes on, I'm right. Uh, Sing loud, sing. The joy that comes out of singing, right? I can remember as a kid, my mom in the kitchen whistling and singing away all day long.
Mhm.
Loved it,
Joy.
loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it.
Right? Yeah, I miss that. So let's talk a little bit about neuroplasticity and dementia. I've got about 10 minutes I'm just trying to be mindful of the time
Yep.
because I think this is really important for those that are home that are caregivers and the impact of neuroplasticity. And I will tell you, this is the first time I've shared this story with anybody. And I'm going to be open and honest about this because I think that it's valuable and helpful. I can't guarantee you that I won't tear up a little bit because it's a story of frustration. So, my mom had pretty advanced vascular dementia. There's all different kinds. Alzheimer's dementia tends to start much earlier, much younger. There's frontal lobe dementia, there's Lewy bodies, there's Parkinson's, but the vast majority of people have vascular dementia, and it's driven by diet, by heart disease, things like that. So she was fairly high functioning from a bodily perspective, but she had pieces that were completely gone, different aspects. So it was a very incomplete dementia. Maybe some of you see this at home with a spouse or a loved one or your own parents. So that with vascular dementia, a piece of the brain sort of dies off. So they may remember something over here, like a wedding or this or that, but have no memory of this, right? So what was happening as my mother's dementia was progressing, and I mentioned this last week to you folks, she stopped using the phone because from a dementia patient's perspective, without an ability to see somebody, she was continuously forgetting who she was talking to on the phone. The memory recall was that short. So what would happen is there were very cyclic conversations. You would, it's kind of like Groundhog Day, over and over and over. We'd have the same conversation over and over for 45 minutes. And she knew enough that that was happening, but couldn't stop it. So we started using neuroplasticity in a program called Ageless Grace that was put together by a woman called Denise Medved, Medved. So if you're interested in looking into this for a family member, it's a great program. And what she does is she puts together a series of CDs of exercises that you can do for like an hour a day with your loved one to help restore, retain, or stop losing function. Okay. So with my mom, very specifically, what I was looking to do was to keep her engaged. She was falling into a schedule of staying in bed. Her personal hygiene was starting to drop off. She wasn't using the phone. We implemented this neuroplasticity program for an hour a day, every day. So it was part of her morning routine for 1 hour. In about a week, we started seeing her getting up out of bed by herself and immediately going down to the shower. And then about 2 weeks into it, we saw her verbally communicating with us at a much higher function, much less depression, almost no depression at this point, and spontaneously using the phone again. Wow. So we were recapturing skills that she lost very quickly and with very little effort, right? So 1 hour a day. Now, it's not always, like we were just talking about the adult day program, it's not always possible. It's hard for family to do this. So we were trying to look at, do we bring somebody in to do this? People got bored. So from their end, doing the trombone or the play, the whatever the play of the day was that they had to do, to my father and my brothers that were doing this with her, they were going out of their cotton picking mind because, they'd done 5, 6 Mondays in a row of playing the trombone with mom, right? And because of that, we're losing, how do I explain this? Because of that, we stopped seeing what was benefits to her, and therefore started getting more careless with the whole program. And eventually they gave it up.
So that's why one of the things we're so committed to is getting our social day program up and running when it's safe to do so, because we want to make sure we're providing that support for families and their caregivers.
Yes.
So, yeah. So
and I have to tell you, it isn't easy, right? So doing this and making a routine with your loved one in order to get some of the gains back is exciting and exhilarating and heartbreaking all rolled into one. And sorry, what was hard for me was I couldn't understand why I couldn't get everybody on board to commit to this, because that little bit of cognitive improvement to me as a geriatric advanced practice nurse was like eureka. To them, I don't know that they saw enough of the gain to understand and celebrate. And this is no disrespect to any of them, right? We're all but mere mortals and we do the best we can.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, this neuroplasticity and coming up with a routine and this age grace that Denise Medved does, if you're just starting to see signs of dementia in your loved one, this program's invaluable. It is inexpensive. It is easy to do. You could hire somebody if it becomes a boredom issue. In Many of us at the long-term care facility complex, I used to work with the Sisters of Notre Dame. We offered Ageless Grace several times a day in different venues throughout it. It was remarkable, the results and the progress that we saw. So understanding that this really has the capacity to hold on to and restore some of the losses, I think is a great tool for your audience to know and understand and to harness. And again, look up Denise Medved and Ageless Grace. If you're really interested and want some good resources, also email in. I'd be happy to share them with you because I think it's that important.
Sure. So, Kay, we just have a few more minutes in today's show. So let's go back again to some of the things that people should be doing at home during this time to help not only themselves, maybe a loved one, to help create some of those new pathways. And it could be taking
play
in the car.
Right? Go play. So take your chalk and draw a hopscotch on the floor, right? You can erase chalk. Learn a new language. Pull up YouTube and learn how to speak Italian, or to say, I love you, or some sort of a phrase in Italian to your loved one. Or learn how to say, I love you in 10 languages, right? There's a challenge. Commit to brushing your teeth with only your left hand for the next 5 days. Figure out how to put curlers in your hair only using one hand. Right? There's all these like silly, ridiculous things, but it's about playing more than anything else. Again,
new work for yourself. You're making fun for yourself. That's learning.
Absolutely. And if you don't have a hobby, get one. Now is a great time to teach yourself something new. And you can start with teaching yourself, but there's a group out there. So there's a group online of quilters. There's a group online of crochet folks. I must have found 15 different groups with macrame, people doing macrame from all over the world, right? So I'm looking at all these different patterns and techniques. So pick a hobby. You deserve that, right? It's a hobby really is an adult form of play, isn't it? Right? It's how we keep ourselves happy and satisfied and engaged. And over, as I was reading through some of these articles, it was about having a rich and diverse life. And if anything, this pause period with Corona has taken away from so many people a richness and diversity because they've been sequestered. But that's also a good sign, and it's something for you to look at of, wait a minute. So for me during Corona, I had a stack of books this high that I needed to catch up on that I did. I had a list of projects that I needed done, having rooms redone in the house, clean my closet, organize my closet, pick up macrame, right? For me, this was an opportunity to get ahead. So if you found yourself during this time lonely, frustrated, irritated, you're a perfect candidate for sort of reclaiming your life and finding some new things to do to encourage the neuroplasticity.
So, really, our challenge to our viewers today is during this next week, kind of think of something that you might want to learn or do differently and send us an email and let us know what it is. And at the beginning of next week's show, we'll share all the emails that we received. You can email me at Joanne Moore at duxburycoa.com. Or if you go to the Senior Center website, you'll see that. And we want to hear from you. I want to talk more about macrame with Kay next week. And I guess I better figure out something I'm going to learn as well.
I would love that. And we can do shows devoted to different people's hobbies, because this really is about teaching one another a new skill set. So if there's somebody out there right now who's going, gosh, I can macrame, I want to hear from you. Right. Need to know. So, yes. So there's your challenge this week. So in previous weeks, we've challenged you to eat better, to sleep more, to relax. The other thing too is what happens in these new hobbies. As you are losing yourself in the hobby and the process, and you're learning and employing new critical thinking, you're also leaving your stressors behind, right? So crafting is an amazing way to escape fairly cheaply.
Yes. So take a walk, have some water, escape in a hobby, and we want to hear all about it. So send us an email and have a wonderful week. And Kay, as always, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your insight on a variety of topics that help us age better. I really appreciate it. I leave every week with something new in my toolbox.
My pleasure. And trust me, this is one of my hobbies, right? This has kept me out of trouble during the pandemic. So I'm happy to be able to do this with you guys.
Well, and I'm glad to keep you out of trouble.
You and me both, sister.
All right. You have a great week, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week on K Talks. Take care.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.